Imagine being blindfolded, shoved down a narrow corridor, and hearing nothing but the echo of screams behind every door. You don't know where you are. You don't know what's coming. But you do know one thing. Nobody leaves Assad's prisons unbroken. Subscribe to Darker Days for more of history's darkest truths. And if you believe these stories must be told, hit the like button right now. 1. The Welcome Party. For many prisoners, the first punishment came before interrogation even began. Guards would form two lines and force new detainees to crawl between them. Armed with batons, cables, and metal rods, they rained down blows on every part of the body. Some prisoners lost consciousness before reaching the end of the hallway. Others emerged with broken bones, unable to walk. Survivors described it as the moment they realized they were no longer human in the eyes of their captors. 2. The tire torture, Dulab. One of Assad's signature methods is known as the Dulab, or the tire. Prisoners are forced to contort their bodies into a car tire, wrists and ankles bound together. Once trapped, guards beat them with cables, whips, or sticks, striking the soles of the feet, legs, and back. The cramped position crushes the chest, making it impossible to breathe properly, while the blows inflict maximum pain. Some prisoners faint from suffocation before the beating stops, only to be revived and thrown back in again. 3. The flying carpet. A method infamous in Syrian prisons, the flying carpet is a wooden board with hinges. The prisoner is strapped onto it, face up or face down, and the board is bent until bones and joints strain at impossible angles. Once immobilized, guards beat the prisoner with electric cables or metal rods, focusing on exposed areas like the chest, face, and genitals. Survivors said the pain wasn't just physical. It was the feeling that their bodies were being broken beyond repair. 4. The electric torture. Assad's interrogators also turned to electricity. Prisoners were shackled to metal beds or chairs while wires were attached to their fingers, toes, or genitals. A crank or generator would deliver shocks that left muscles spasming violently, sometimes causing burns or unconsciousness. Prisoners described the smell of their own flesh burning as guards laughed and turned up the voltage. For some, the shocks caused permanent nerve damage. Others simply never woke up again. 5. The hanging torture, Shabe. Perhaps the most notorious of all is the Shabe. Prisoners are suspended from the ceiling by their wrists, often with their toes barely touching the floor, or not at all. Hours pass, then days. Shoulders dislocate, arms swell until circulation stops. During this time, guards whip and beat the dangling bodies, mocking them as they beg for relief. Many prisoners described wishing for death just to escape the agony of the Shabe. These punishments weren't isolated acts of cruelty. They were systematic, designed to break every prisoner's body and spirit. 6. The salt room. Some survivors described being locked into bare cells where their open wounds were deliberately treated with salt water. Guards would pour buckets of brine over lacerated skin, or force prisoners to roll on salt-covered floors until they screamed in agony. The burning sensation was unbearable, but the cruelty went further. Infection and dehydration set in quickly. For the victims, the pain never stopped. It lingered long after the torture ended. 7. The cold cell. Not all punishments were violent. Some were psychological slow torture. Prisoners were stripped naked and locked into freezing, unheated cells during winter nights. With no blankets, no food, and no water, the body shivered uncontrollably, teeth rattling until jaws ached. Many collapsed from hypothermia, hallucinating or falling unconscious. Guards would sometimes enter just to splash cold water on the half-frozen bodies, laughing as they twitched back to life. 8. The nail chair. Inside Assad's prisons, there were reports of wooden chairs embedded with sharp nails pointing upward. Prisoners were forced to sit on them for hours, unable to shift without tearing flesh. Some fainted and collapsed onto the spikes completely, embedding nails into their backs or thighs. Others were forced to remain upright, blood soaking their clothes until interrogators were satisfied. 9. Mock executions. Perhaps the most terrifying method of all didn't even involve pain, but fear. Guards would drag blindfolded prisoners into courtyards, press guns to their heads and pull the trigger. The chambers were empty, but the click echoed like thunder. In other cases, prisoners were lined up and made to listen as others were executed, only to realize later that it had been staged. The psychological scars ran deeper than physical wounds. Many survivors said they would have preferred real death to the constant fear of a false one. 10. The corpse cell. To break resistance completely, guards sometimes locked prisoners into cells already filled with bodies, some dead, some barely alive. The stench of decay was overwhelming, the air thick with rot and disease. Being forced to sleep beside corpses to hear the moans of the dying left prisoners traumatized long after release. In Assad's prisons, even the walls themselves seemed to breathe death. These punishments went beyond interrogation. They were tools of control, designed to crush not only the body, but the very will to survive. In Part 3, we'll uncover the most grotesque punishments ever reported, acts so dehumanizing that even seasoned guards admitted they could never forget the screams. 11. The rape cells. One of the darkest realities of Assad's prisons is the use of sexual violence as punishment. Both men and women were subjected to rape, often in front of others. Survivors described being held in small, dimly lit rooms where guards or even other prisoners were ordered to assault them repeatedly. For women, pregnancy was a common result. For men, the humiliation was used to destroy their sense of identity. In both cases, the psychological scars cut deeper than any whip. 12. The burning punishment. Prisoners were sometimes branded with hot irons or had lit cigarettes pressed into their flesh until skin bubbled and muscle charred. Others were doused in fuel and set alight in small, controlled bursts, just enough to burn hair, blister skin, and fill the room with the stench of smoke and cooked flesh. These punishments left scars that marked survivors for life, constant reminders of their time in Assad's hell. 13. The ghost position. A method designed for endurance torture. Prisoners' arms were twisted behind their backs, wrists tied together, and then lifted upward until shoulders dislocated. They were left hanging in this impossible position for hours, unable to sit, lie down, or move. The pain was relentless, tearing joints apart. Some lost permanent use of their arms. Guards nicknamed this punishment the ghost because victims often looked like broken, dangling shadows of themselves. 14. Forced cannibalism. In some of the most shocking testimonies, prisoners were forced to eat filth or even parts of dead cellmates under threat of death. Guards mocked them as they gagged and vomited, then forced them to continue. The goal wasn't sustenance, it was total degradation, to strip a human being of dignity so completely that survival itself felt like a curse. 15. The meat hook. One of the most grotesque punishments reported was the use of metal hooks in interrogation rooms. Prisoners were hung by the wrists, elbows, or even ribs, their full body weight pulling on torn flesh. Some were left dangling for hours, others beaten while suspended. The pain was unimaginable, the wounds often fatal. For those who survived, the scars carved across their bodies never healed. constant proof of Assad's cruelty. These punishments weren't designed to extract confessions, they were designed to erase humanity. Assad's prisons became factories of pain, where survival itself was the cruelest punishment of all. 16. The acid baths. Some survivors testified that prisoners were doused with acid, leaving skin blistered, peeling, and permanently scarred. Others were partially submerged in chemical-filled containers that slowly ate away at their flesh. The agony was indescribable, pain that burned deep into muscle and bone. For those who lived, the mutilation marked them forever. Their very bodies turned into warnings to others. 17. The mass hangings. In Assad's notorious Sednaya prison, hangings were carried out in secret, often dozens at a time. Prisoners were blindfolded, led into basements, and strung up on makeshift gallows. Some died instantly, others dangled, choking and twitching for long minutes. Survivors described hearing the sound of ropes creaking and bodies thrashing in the dark, the final chorus of Assad's justice system. 18. Starvation cells. Prisoners were locked into bare rooms with no food or water, left to waste away slowly. Days turned into weeks, skin clung to bone, organs shut down, and hallucinations consumed the mind. Some were kept alive just long enough to witness others collapse and die beside them. For those still breathing, every second was another reminder that death would come, just not soon enough. 19. The corpse disposal. To erase evidence, Assad's regime often dumped bodies into mass graves or incinerated them in crematorium-like facilities. But before disposal, corpses were sometimes piled inside cells with the living, forcing survivors to sleep beside rotting bodies. The smell of decomposition, the crawling of maggots, and the constant reminder of what awaited them broke even the strongest spirits. 20. The legacy of fear. The worst punishment wasn't just physical pain. It was knowing that the world outside rarely saw, rarely intervened, and often chose to look away. Survivors carried that silence like another form of torture. Inside Assad's prisons, people weren't simply punished, they were erased, their screams trapped behind concrete walls. And that was the regime's ultimate weapon. Not just killing the body, but destroying the idea that life inside could ever matter.
مين رباك؟ بشار الأسد. مين اتبعك؟ بشار الأسد. لمين بتصلي؟ لبشار الأسد. أيوة.
If you made it this far, you've just witnessed some of the darkest punishments in human history. Subscribe to Darker Days for more stories they never wanted you to hear. If you think the Mongols ruled more by fear than by force, hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Which do you think is more terrifying? Physical torture that breaks the body, or psychological torment that destroys the soul? Let us know in the comments.